Welcome to the Alchemy of Transformation podcast.
I'm Anouk, a transformational coach, multidisciplinary artist, speaker, and teacher.
And I'm Elijah, a multidimensional coach, a transformational artist, speaker, and teacher.
We are two source workers deeply connected with our cosmic origins. We are all about incarnating our higher purpose into our lives and helping others do the same.
In our discussions, we will share our favorite pieces of wisdom and tools that we personally use to stay aligned and get the best out of ourselves.
We hope that you are as excited as we are to deeply explore the mysteries of the multiverse.
Are you ready?
Let's dive.
Salut Anouk.
Hello, Elijah.
Hey, so nice to be here with you right now and talk about the
inner child.
The inner child. Wow, I feel really excited right now to talk about the inner child, but also invite myself to tap in my inner child. And we get all serious about preparing with podcast, but all of a sudden my inner child just popped up and I feel more ready to play.
On that note, I'd like to say that I had put this sweater, which is for the people who will listen to the audio version. It's a rainbow sweater, which my adult self would have never picked. But yeah, it was definitely a comment. Command.
A command.
Command. Thank you.
A request.
Yeah, totally. And I was wearing it, but I was a little warm, so I took it off. But as you said, it's like my inner child that invited itself to the conversation and that I want to bring forth in that conversation, because at the end, it's what inner child medicine is about, to create room and space in our lives so our inner child can express itself and add value to anything we do.
And spontaneity, also that spontaneity of the child that is often very much in the present moment. The child is so, doesn't think so much about the future or the past so much as we do as adults, right? There's so much in the present moment. And so I don't know if that's how it happened, but I could imagine being at the thrift store and, my hand falls on this thing and my first thought is like, But then there's a voice that says, but I like it. And you have this moment of like, oh, right. I do want you to have more room. And you say, why not? Let's do it. Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that sweater with us.
I mean, it's a simple but concrete example. Probably we're going to come back to that kind of thoughts later in the conversation, but how can we integrate more the inner child into our lives, right? Right. I feel like we could start by just,
what is the inner child?
Yeah, exactly. What are we talking about here? Okay. So what are your thoughts about what is the inner child?
Are you asking me or the audience?
Everybody, because everybody's inputs are welcome, but in that case, you are my interlocutor.
Interlocuteur. Yeah, I'm the one speaking with you. Is interlocutor a word in English? I'm not sure. Our little bilingual brain.
I think so, because I used it once with someone and that person was like, what the heck is that? And I searched it and it exists, but I think it's not very used often. And I have this like French wired brain. So sometimes I just translate words in a good way, but not in an English wired brain.
Yeah. So as the person who is speaking with you, I will answer the question what is my take on what is the inner child?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's so vast, which is why we wanted to talk about it, because it is something that is worth going deeper. Well, in other episodes, we've talked about archetypal energy, subconscious forces that exist in the human psyche. And I guess one way to describe the inner child in a psycho-spiritual way would be to, I was really seriously talking about the inner child, and then this puppy shows up. It's really distracting.
Sorry.
and with your little face, Anouk, of like, look at my puppy. It's like the little girl in you is like, I have a puppy and he's so cute.
We talked about integrating our inner child to that conversation, so it might get a little non-linear, right?
A little bit, but hopefully we'll manage to keep your attention, and hopefully also attract your inner child to be more playful.
Totally.
So yeah, the inner child can be seen like as this archetypal energy, right? This part of us, one expression of the many fragments of the different expressions each human have, right? From a very sovereign place to a very victim place. Like there's so many different archetypes right now. I'm not giving awesome examples, but the inner child is an energy that we can all tap into, that is inherent within ourselves. Often so that's one way to describe the inner child. I could go into different things within that, but one thing that is, to me, like one of the most important resonance about the inner child is its innocence and its capacity to be in deep imagination in the present moment, which I believe is our purest creator state.
Yeah, maybe I'd like to add a little bit to this archetypal energy you talked about, because when we talk about archetypes, it's like this pure form that exists at, sorry, puppy, I like you, I love you, but I'm distracted now. Yeah, it's this pure form that exists in like higher realms of reality or higher dimensions, and that includes everything that has to do with a child, kind of like the complete and perfect child. And then we can all tap into that energy, and we all embody that energy in function of our stories and our personalities. So we all filter that energy in a very unique and personalized way. So there is this idea that being a child is a state that inhabits us, and then we all have our own relationship with it. And it's a moment to moment dynamic, forever evolving relationship.
And yeah, when you say this, like, how do we each create our own signature of that archetypal energy of the inner child? Like you said, it's through our life experience, and so it often the way we relate to our own inner child is how in our early years we were taken care of as a child. We will kind of like interiorize those conversations, and because of from 0 to some months, years, we are pre-language. Some of these ways of being, these programs, these patterns, these ways of these relationships with the world, with our parents or caretakers, we take them in a very deeply subconscious way. And it's what's kind of fascinating to do, quote unquote, inner child work, is part of it is going and explore part of our childhood and how we have interiorized certain conversation that taints, that filters, distorts our capacity to tap in the pure energy of the archetypal inner child, which I would love to call the divine child. Sometimes we talk about the divine mother, the divine father, and here's the divine
Mm-hmm.
child, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Completely.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Which brings the difference or the distinction between what we could call the wounded child and the healthy child. So our inner child, our inner children have multiple faces, um, and as children we all encounter traumas. And what I would define as a trauma here is just an emotional shock that remains unprocessed. And as you said, in our early childhood years, we shape our vision of reality. And maybe that time my mother was impatient with me because she was tired and she was overwhelmed with my three other siblings. And in my needs and my innocence and my vulnerability as a child, it was a shock that was never processed because I didn't have room later to cry or to express whatever I needed to express. And then there's this belief or this perception of reality that, oh, I am unheard, or when I express my needs, they are unmet, for example. And then we build on those traumas or those emotional shocks, and that creates our like wounded inner child complex, let's say. I don't have highly scientific vocabulary for it, but
Well, it becomes like each of these moments are like little vibrational pockets of memory. And
Mhm.
then if most of them have the same type of emotion, they kind of become this bigger vibration, and that bigger density of sense of self, or and um it gets really interesting to look at it vibrationally that way, because sometimes we can like be on a one thread of like the inner child, if we're healing the inner child and going into those different moments where there was a wound, like you said, an unprocessed emotional shock. um the We can go on, if that's what we're doing in life, we're like actually healing. And like sometimes when we're in the dark night of the soul, that's what's going on. We're going through all of these moments of darker
Mm.
energy, of darker vibration. The vibration in there is intensified by a negative emotion. And to to sometimes we are so lucky that we go through one memory, two memory, three memory in a bunch of a few weeks or a few months, where we were kind of cleansing, going through each of the memories. And with our love, with our higher self, with our divine inner parent, we can go see those different little pockets of moments and bring in new awareness, because they might have been frozen since then. You might have never
Mhm.
looked at it. You might have never realized, oh my God, yeah.
Mhm. Oh
Oh,
yeah, I remember my first months, even years of therapy, when I was told to hold my inner child and bring forth this like mother energy myself, and that it was my responsibility to do it. I was just like, I don't have words there. Like I wasn't able to process and to embody that energy because I had repressed my inner child so very deep in my unconscious. Because what happens with this wounded child is that it's in pain. So, and who wants to feel the pain, even though it's necessary to clear our auras, our energetic bodies, so we are fully here and now and that we can create from a conscious place. We all repress stuff because it's painful. Um,
yeah. And um sorry, go.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that like we repress it, but in a way, another word that I'd like to use right now is we store it. We
Mm.
store it for the moment. We have enough resources, inner and or outer, to unpack it.
Mm-hmm.
Or we have enough will to move energy through the shields of, wash, I'm not going to take care of that thing, or the whatever reaction we have with towards our inner child or wounded inner child. And I'm saying wash because as you were talking, I was remembering my own. I think as a child I was left in poopy diaper a lot, and I'm just, as you were talking, I was processing the fact that I probably was met often by different types of people, not my parents, like anyway, social services or whatever, with me in poopy diaper, and like me as a child who just has, I was just processing that right now. Oh, I wonder how many times people like picked me up and was like, ooh, ooh, there's like poo everywhere. And like, anyway, so like when I started doing therapy, like you were saying, it took me months to pass through I had identified that there was a spot in my left hip. It was kind of like where all of this densified energy was. And I remember looking at it energetically and physically and having this sense of repulsion. Like it took me months to go through feeling repulsed by that aspect of me, to eventually, thankful to like therapy and Barbara Brennan school, and like just so much energy and focus and love and resources and like methods, right? Strategies to go pass through this huge shield, and then really feel the shame underneath. And like I remember, like I'm in my mid 30s and I'm really into it. I'm like, I just tapped into this deep healing, and I'm in the street and I'm pretending that I'm removing my poopy diaper. And like I have a couple peers with me that are like, yeah, cheering me on. The others are like, kind of, well, this is too weird for me. They just kept going to go to the restaurant. But I was blessed at that moment to have a couple peers witnessing me releasing that. So sorry, that's a long anecdote, but I just wanted to share that there's so many different ways for us to approach inner child work, and it might not be as disgusting for you, but you'll have your own emotion, you'll have your own resistance, which has a repulsing, a moving away from, and don't
And I
stop at
think
that.
that I appreciate your sharing, because one part of inner child work or inner child healing is like this what's the word I'm looking for, drastic honesty or radical honesty of like whatever resistance I'm having or difficult experience I'm having, what's underneath. And often there's shame, or there's the belief of being unworthy. And whenever we encounter this feeling of not being enough, usually it's our inner child that's desperate and that's in need of guidance.
Yeah.
And it's often hard to acknowledge, because again, there's pain there. But whenever we have the courage to hold the hand or hold this child and just listen to whatever it has to say and has to express, or whatever need it has, and we do our best to answer it, it's like it's releasing what is not serving us anymore, and making thinner this shield you talked about, and giving us access to this divine child that has incredible gifts to offer us,
Yeah.
of creativity, of playfulness, of being adventurous and wanting to explore, and just be able to tap into this innate joy. Whenever a child feels listened to, is emotionally and physically safe, it wants to experiment life. So there's definitely I would say a collective need to tap into that energy to make this world better and to live our best lives.
Yeah, I agree. And I really feel that there are many ways to get there, but one, I don't want to say the only way, but in my opinion, prayer to God surrendering to God and personal inner work are kind of the only way to really tap into that pure state of being in the present moment and the spontaneity of generous love and imagination. And is to go through this, to do the work. And I just want to go back to, what I said earlier is like, we store these moments without realizing. So subconsciously we have these behaviors which kind of look like whatever our personality, which can be like, if we go deeper and we're like, it's not my personality, it's my defense mechanism. And then we will go a bit deeper and we're like, what am I defending? And we eventually can track all the way back to specific moments. And these moments are stored within our aura, within our field, within our psyche. But we've talked about it, and I'm sorry to be so serious about it, but I just want to highlight the fact that we need support. Either I need to expand my consciousness and I need to meditate, to do sport, to do whatever I need to do, to journal, to draw, to dance, or I need also external support, people who can hold a bigger space while I fall apart, or maybe even somebody who knows what's the next step because they went through it. And like sometimes it is necessary to explore our inner self in a awesome intentional space with others, because if we look at it through an energy perspective, we have the aura and we have these memories, which are actually like frozen capsules of moments stuck in our aura, which can then conglomerate as grapes around one another when they have the same vibration. When we do inner healing, it's like we're going in one specific grape, and all of a sudden we're in it. The astral world, we're the actor who was in the play, and we can merge with the hero of that story. And so all of a sudden, if we're not careful, we're completely identified with the emotion that's in there. And whatever it is, the emotion, let's say it's anger or shame, let's go with shame. And so as we're doing the healing, sometimes part of the healing is to be able to have a foot identified with the hero of the capsule, the emotion, the shame, the whatever, and a foot in reality right now as an adult, as a higher self, as a very well-intentioned being who is looking for liberation and healing. And to make sure we have a foot in both. But however, sometimes it's really hard to do that, especially when we've never done it. So that's why we at first sometimes need external support, or for really big things where we might completely identify with the thing and not be able to actually bring in resources and then re-traumatize ourselves. Like we have, so we store it until we're capable of dealing with it. And if you want to deal with it, I encourage you to prepare yourself through personal practice and having at least one other person or a network of people who will support you.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I remember having a conversation with a friend, and I'm thinking of it because sometimes we can trick ourselves and be like, oh, I can handle it by myself. And I'm glad that you brought for the shame theme. And I remember that we talked about it a little bit, but it's worth repeating because it's such like a golden piece to our healing and our expansion. She had this hard time, and she was able to recognize that it was her inner child that needed to be held, and that needed to have this like tantrum, right? This release. This huge like emotional explosion. But in her experience, there was shame related to explode like it in the front of other people. So she had this distorted perception that it was safer to handle it by herself, and that she was able to hold space for herself. Which can be the case, and sometimes it is okay. But there is so much healing that comes from being witnessed by someone who is just able to see you and hold you and acknowledge your experience. It's restoring our dignity. It's restoring our worth. Even though I have this intensity inside, and even though I'm expressing it, I am still worthy of love, of support.
Yeah. I yeah. Sorry, I was really moved by what you were saying. And I feel lost in my emotion right now. I went into half of my brain. The linear has left the ship.
Yeah, because the inner child, as we said, is emotional, irrational, yeah, non-linear.
Yeah.
And it's always with us, always. So we can either pay attention to it or not. And sometimes I read a book of an art therapist about the inner child and inner child healing and work. And in some of her exercises, she also mentioned that if you're calling in your inner child and it doesn't answer the call, it might be that it's been neglected for so long and it lost its trust in you. So this relationship with our inner child is a constant work, as it is to be a parent. You're not a parent, I mean, unless you have a shared custody, right? But you're not a parent half of the time. A child needs constant attention, needs constant cares. So
yeah, very true. And when you speak of that type of care, of regular care, it makes me feel that like eventually come to this place of inner child of God, of inner child of this universe. And one of the ways that I find the most efficient in being able to connect with God is by clearing my space and to be truly in emptiness as much as possible, in this deep neutrality and this opening to be. And if my self is busy with unmet needs or unheard needs or unheard aspects of me, there's this subconscious rambling in the back of me that is negotiating about this, either avoiding or trying to get, or like, and that's in the way of being in the emptiness that I would love to be able to connect with God and that God state. So like, it's like all interweaved together. I don't know if I was able to create that sense.
Totally, because whenever there is discomfort, is if we are unable to sit with our discomfort, what are we going to do? We're gonna numb in some way. So we either keep ourselves over busy and we do, so we're not in touch with this sensitive, painful experience. Sorry, some movement behind me.
Or we just get busy with other things, or we numb, like you're I also want to say that sometimes maybe we we get emotional about something else, like it's a form of denial and a form of moving the energy. If that makes sense, like we're not going to be emotional about the deeper authentic need, but we're going to react about something else.
We're going to get upset about something stupid, for example.
Yeah. Well,
like,
I have an example.
Okay, go ahead.
I've been polyamorous most of my life, and about 10 years ago, I was with this man, and we had a lovely relationship. Loved him. But he was very sexual, and as was I. But he was more sexual than me. And at some point, I kind of hooked him up with a friend of mine. I thought it was cool. The second date, Oh yeah, second date. The second date they had, I was totally cool about it. But I made such a scene about the fact that he parked the car 3 blocks away. Like,
Mm.
like, you know, he came back, parked three blocks away. And then when the next day I heard about it, I was just like, and I was all heated up about it. And then like a few hours later, I was like, wow, I think that was an overreaction. Oh, maybe I am jealous. Like, so that's just an
Mhm.
example of me like not being skilled at the time in being more honest about how I felt, because at the time I hadn't healed very much. I hadn't spent much time healing my relationship to bond. So
Mm.
I was polyamorous because it was because I was very detached to bond. I could make many bonds. I was generous with my bonds, but
Mhm.
they could come and go, or so I thought.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm grateful that you're bringing the conversation in that direction, because I I think that's an important topic, related to inner child work or inner child archetype, is the attachment style we have.
I'm so glad you
And
bring it up. Yes.
and as you said in the beginning, we tend to parent ourselves the way we've been parented in our childhood. So the attachment style between our inner parent and our inner child is very much the same that we had and maybe still have with our parents and other meaningful relationship bonds into our lives, often with our lovers, our partners. It's where it tends to show up a lot, or with close friends as well. Whenever there's like deep emotional connection, it's going to trigger our attachment style.
And I would also say reliance, like the moment we have to rely on somebody, like somebody in a
Mm,
team, at work, at school, those can
mm,
also be places where we can see that, like not as much, obviously, we're not going to be as emotionally impacted, but I think it's a fun place to observe also. But
mhm.
uh
Yeah. And I don't want to go into like deep theoretical stuff about attachment style, but we basically there's basically secure attachment and insecure or anxious attachment. And what is secure attachment is emotional safety. As a child, I'm very much dependent of my parents, and as you said, you said the perfect words, like, can I rely on my parent? Is my parent um steady enough in its care and in its presence and in its responses, so I have the assurance that whatever insecurity or issue or problem as a child, I can go to my parent and I'm going to be received exactly as I am.
and loved and reassured on our bond.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a secure bond. Yay. And and so I just want to clarify that the way I understand it, there's like 3 styles, let's say: the insecure, the secure, and the avoidant.
I'm not aware of like the precise vocabulary in English because I studied psychology in French. But there's secure, and then there's 3 others: anxious type of attachment. So they're all anxious, but they have different ways of showing up. So there's the avoidant, and the other one, I don't know like the translation, but it's more of a ambivalent. It's the word we use in French, kind of attachment. And then there's the disorganized. But I'm doing like free translation right now,
Uh-huh.
so I'm not
Yeah.
sure if it's
Yeah.
like the proper vocabulary they use in
And
English. Yeah.
these languages, they're a language is an agreement on a word in a definition, right? And so there's different intellectuals who have created different types of lingo.
Mm-hmm.
But one that I've read that I have found so simple and really kind of was clear is like just observing anxious or avoidant, right? And just that idea of like they meet so well and create these loops of drama. And I have been in these loops for sure. And I've worked hard, and right now I'm very happy to be in a relationship where I don't find that those programs are showing up, but I had to do a lot of healing of my own in, observing my insecurities and my avoidances or whatever, where I was at. But yeah, no, it's great that you bring this up, and I want to surf on this. I was talking with my partner like a couple months ago. They mentioned this, that they were, is it Gabor Mate? I can't remember who says this, but this sense that if as a child our certain needs are not met, our energy goes into having to meet that ourselves, right? Through denying or whatever emotional response that we have, which means that some of our energy can't go and keep expending it. Like those who have those needs met can expand that way, right? So like obviously if you have less food, maybe you have less energy, maybe you're weaker or whatever, like, but if you have less emotional support, and at home, when you get home, like it's always this insecure experience where you might not grow as much. And I'm bringing this up because lately I've been thinking a lot about it, where I've been doing a lot of work on my childhood and my inner child and my relationship to myself and parenting myself, and realizing right now, like it's this my month's focus. Now that I have cleared certain leaks in my life, cleared certain loops, certain grapes of negative emotion, now that I've put love and love and love, and poof, they've even like decrystallized, and now wow, energy is running more freely and my consciousness feels more whole. How can I parent myself and support myself to grow in those places where as a child I wasn't able to grow? And one of them is school. Like I was so focused on my mom's illness, mental illness, that I was really smart at school. I was a good student, but I didn't study. I didn't push it. I wasn't attached to good grades because that was the focus of nobody in my life. Like the focus was, is my mom going to be okay when I come home? Is she even going to be there? Am I going to be fed? Like, so now I'm actually back in school and not in a field that is about healing or helping other people. It's about creation in the digital and 3D and blah, 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 and VR. And it feels like I'm finally tapping into education for myself in a new way. And I am opening my psyche and my subconscious and guidance to receive the tutorship, the structure, the cheerleading, maybe a hint of like competition. Like I've never been in competition, but it seems like it helps certain people thrive, so I'm like right now exploring finally a new field for my inner child to grow up. I just wanted to share that. Thank you. You're the first, I'm emotional sharing it because it's very new for me.
And I'm glad that you're showing yourself vulnerable, because as we said, our inner child is always with us, and a child will always have the qualities of vulnerability and sensitivity and a need for safety, emotional safety and reassurance. So it's not that, oh, I healed my inner child and now I'm done and now I can go live my life and do whatever I want to do. It's a presence that's forever with us. So shifting this inner attachment style is about, as we said, just create this like safe container that is always unconditionally there for our vulnerable self. And then one part of a secure attachment, which I could relate with, like the safe container would be maybe the divine mother, and then the part of the divine father would be to push its child so it can go explore, and it takes risks in a safe and contained way, knowing that it can always come back to this more mother holding warm energy. So it's not about getting rid of our fears and insecurities. It's about acknowledging them and holding them and be able to take inspired action, even though it's new, and scary, and we don't know what's going to happen. But no matter what's going to happen, we have this safe place we can always come back to.
I feel safe when you speak. There's something in your tone of voice where the Divine Mother can really come through.
So did I. I also made this work of healing a lot my inner child and acknowledging it and let it be exactly as it was. And as we hold this vulnerable, panicked, despaired child, there's this sense of safety that's created. And what is any kind of emotion? It's energy in motion. So if we let it be, it's gonna move, it's gonna be released. And then we have this clearing, this space.
It's so hard to imagine when we're trying to contain it or hide it, and then we're living through it, and we're like, this is gonna be forever. Well, no, buddy, it ain't. To let it go, you got to feel it. So once you're feeling it, you're that much closer to letting it go completely, or at least in huge chunks. So
feeling it completely, right? And dive into it. Yeah, embrace it.
Yeah. And I think I want to leave you on that. Just go feel.
Compassionately and lovingly, of course. And find an outer container for yourself, and it's too big to handle by yourself. And this support's there. Maybe we can like come back to the beginning with this like divine child that we are. We are it by essence, we are infinitely unconditionally loved and held and guided. There is so many support in the spirit realm around us. So by essence, God, our spirit, is our perfect parent and is going to provide if we open the door to be held and supported.
And I want to say, not just open the door, also invite, and be very clear on who you invite and what is the purpose of this tea party. But there are so many angels and guides in the spiritual world that are ready and waiting for somebody to call on them, to contribute to them in the light and the love. But we live in a world of consent. So sometimes, we are so focused on our pain that we forget that healing is possible, and we forget to invite those energies. So just a little reminder, it's allowed, feel free to say thank you for the support that is here as I am going deeper and healing myself.
Completely. And we're kind of concluding, but I had another flash that might be important or relevant to share. And this is the theme of boundaries. We talked about the divine father as the one who pushes you out of your comfort zone and encourages you to explore and take risks. But the divine masculine or the divine father is also the one that's gonna stand up and gonna set boundaries and speak up and protect your inner child. So it's also a responsibility to set up those boundaries in whatever bond is not serving us. And I have this memory of this relationship with a man that I love deeply, and I still love him, but he was unable to offer me what I needed in a relationship. So I had to say no at some point. I had to extract myself from that relationship, even though it was super painful for my inner child that wanted this recognition and this deep connection with a partner, but he wasn't the right one for me. So I had to muscle my divine father and be able to say it's enough and I'm gonna quit. So this is one example, but there is so many ways we can set boundaries and say no in order to keep our inner child, our vulnerable, sensitive self safe.
Yeah. I'm really triggered by the word quit that you used, because for me, quitting is like this association of not finishing something. But that's
Mm.
my own association. But so I just feel the need to shift that verb, if you don't mind, to be like, I'm going to set my foot down and say, you
Mhm.
deserve something else. And
Mhm.
let's make sure you get that.
Mhm.
And we're going to lovingly leave this person on the other side of our heart space on that level of deep interconnection.
Mhm.
Thank you for letting me rephrase it.
Oh, I mean, the words we use are important, and as we mentioned, I have this French wired brain, so sometimes my translations are not the most accurate.
Oh, you're doing
So,
so well.
mhm. Yeah, uh-huh, great. But thank you for making the distinction.
Well, maybe other people don't have that connotation of the word quit, but I felt it. Yeah, yeah. Because it's like, anyway, I was going to go in a mental tangent. Word
Mhm.
definition.
Mhm. So maybe as a final word, we talked a lot about like inner child healing and reparenting ourselves and create this like secure attachment with ourselves. Um, but we didn't talk about play. We have this whole episode about playfulness and how it is important into our lives. And it's very much related to the inner child. So whenever we create this safe bond, then there's this like also need for reflection about what kind of play, what kind of fun do I want to invite into my life, and allow ourselves to be silly or buy a rainbow sweater even though it's like, oh, I'm gonna look silly or I'm gonna look crazy or whatever, and just allow our inner child to be silly and to be spontaneous and just to follow whatever impulse of joy and playfulness we can have.
Sometimes when I feel really safe, I really get into my little inner child, my inner child. I was gonna say little girl because I guess I felt more like a girl at the time because I didn't have another option. But so I feel like she's here now and she wanted to say hi.
So that's one thing
Mhm.
that that's one thing that as I've been healing my inner child, she pops up sometimes in the right, like in very intimate settings, with my partner
Mhm.
or friends,
Mhm.
specific friends. But
Yeah, in my case, she shows a lot with my dog. Whenever we walk in the woods, and I'm just like talking with flowers and trees and saying hi to birds, and then singing like silly songs to my dog, inventing like improvising on the spot that I love her and she's the most perfect dog in the world. So it doesn't have to be, we can create like dates with ourselves and go whatever thing feels like playing or inviting our inner child, but sometimes it's this 5 minutes of being spontaneous, and we feel recharged and we feel we connect with that innocence.
yeah, we do feel recharged after, like the
Mhm.
weight of our whatever mental processing we carry is like poof, it's gone. For we really connected to the life force all of a sudden. um we just can't stop. But as you mentioned, it's something you've mentioned in other episodes, but I think it's so perfect to mention it here again, which one of the exercises that you've done to connect with your inner child is to write with your non-dominant hand.
Mm-hmm. And this is from, I mentioned her, I think, or it was before, Lucia Capacchione. She wrote the book, The Recovery of Your Inner Child. And she also wrote the book, I think it's The Power of Your Other Hands. She's an art therapist and she suggests different exercises so we can connect and heal and reframe our relationship with our inner child. And one of her exercises is to do dialogue with ourselves, so right and left hand. And so your ego self or your personality or adult self, right, with your dominant hand, and the inner child answers with the non-dominant hand. So this is a way to be in touch with our inner child and get clarity about its needs and about its reactions, and just create that bond, and this like maybe regular or not that regular, but do a check-in with the inner child.
I love that,
Mhm.
because it's so pragmatic, like it's so structured, and you can actually read. I mean, if you can read your non-dominant handwriting, but
Mhm.
it's a conversation. It's a very legit conversation that gives you so much information and connection, and I love it.
Mhm. And I mean, we have those conversations all the time with our inner child and any other kind of archetypes or energies that inhabit us. But the fact that we take a time and we sit and we make it a ritual or something more like formal or official, it brings this to consciousness. And learning to parent ourselves, as I said, is a learning. So if we internalize a model that is not ideal, or that is very critic, or that is neglecting the inner child, it's also a good way to like, it's a good reflection of how we treat our inner child. And we can be very harsh and very controlling with our inner child. So
Oh yeah.
just be able to see how we answer sometimes some demands or some needs, how we can be impatient. It's like, oh, okay, I get why I whatever react in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. Spending time is how we get information. Spending time with it, with our intention and action and emotion, is how we get information and release and love and get more of our deeper essence. Because in a way, our inner child taps us into our deeper inner essence, and all the
Mhm.
quote unquote inner child work is releasing those debris of past selves, of distorted, fragmented energy, which is not ourself, which is in the taking space instead of our deeper essence. So
Mhm.
the more we clear it up, the more of our who we truly are shows up.
Mhm. Completely.
Deep emptiness, vacuity. I love you.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
That I may be filled with all possibilities.
Amen.
A child.
Okay, so I feel we are complete. Are we?
Yeah, please feel free to check the show notes for we're going to have links to the books and the different things that we talked about in this episode, and also we're going to put up an image of the anatomy of the spiritual self, just to kind of give you a bit of a visual of some of the things we talk about when we talk about essence and wound and inner child and all that jazz.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and please share your inner children, inner child with us, how it's been touched and moved by this
Mm.
conversation.
And if you have a drawing that was inspired by our show, you could send it to us, and then we'd have it.
Yay.
Cool. So,
Thank
yeah.
you. Mhm.
Until next time, you guys. Love upon you and us.
Lots of love.
Hey, wasn't that interesting? What did you think? We certainly hope that something opened up for you and that you know and love yourself even more.
We surely want to witness your insights and transformation, so please share with us what you got out of it. You'll find our social media links in the description.
Stay tuned for the next alchemical conversation.
Take care, beautiful star being.